What commentaries do the team recommend? I went through a few. I don't know if anyone else uses a few very regularly.
Commentaries can be very, very useful for whichever step that it was that I mentioned earlier, which is the seeing what general church history believed. Every single commentary is going to be written with an agenda. That's something to bear in mind.
Yeah.
And every single commentary is going to be written by somebody who has a certain theological bend, shall we say, whether it's to the Reform side or to the Arminian side, or even if it's all good and solid somewhere down the middle, there's still going to be a purpose to it. So commentaries can be very, very useful. And when Sam mentioned a few, there's a few that I like to use just to sort of, so a couple of pieces of advice I would give is, number one, try and identify fairly early on which way this commentary is coming from. And secondly, don't just read one commentary and take the comments as words in red, so to speak, right? Because A, they're not. That's what scripture is, not the comments of man. But B, it can be useful reading around and getting a wider perspective on what different pools of thought are on certain areas, and then sort of using scripture to read through and go, okay, well, I can see how you've come to this, but that doesn't quite line up with what I see here, and off you go. So just be a little bit wary about relying too heavily on commentaries. I think most of the team would agree, but speak up if you have
I think the thing is, Joe, that sometimes there just are difficult passages of scripture that you need someone that's looked into it to maybe explain at least their thoughts, and you go, oh, yeah, I didn't think of that angle. That might lead me down another path of study. So it's okay to be super spiritual and say just read the Bible, but sometimes just reading the Bible, you just simply can't get the full perspective or the other relating passages that others have studied, looked into in a godly way, and then express that through their commentary, and you're taking advantage of their godly study of the word. And so there's no problem with it whatsoever, because that can really help you. And maybe looking at 3 or 4 and getting different opinions on that particular passage can really balance this out. But yeah, I think they're essential.
Yeah.
One thing I'd sort of like to sort of kick into this one as well is commentaries, like you said, Joe, and like I said as well. They will have an agenda. They will have a leniency towards one thing or another. They will have some form of interpretation of certain things compared to other commentaries. But commentaries can be really useful for a new Christian, especially if you have come from, for instance, a Muslim background, or you've come in, for instance, from you left Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormonism or things like that. You have to realign your theology to Scripture. Can be really helpful, and especially people who might be growing in their faith from sort of a teenagers upwards, can be really helpful to sort of get your brain into the right sort of mindset to think about these things. And if you want to find out about a certain term, commentaries and also study Bibles are really good for a lot of different things, and the study Bible specifically can help you gain really deep insight into the world that was there at the time, like the context of when that was written, how it relates to other books in the Bible, who was invading who were the local kings, and what have you. Those are really, really that's the approach I would take, is sort of take things with a grain of salt, but you can find some really, really good gems in commentaries and things that you never thought of. One great one that I do recommend is it's a classic, is the Matthew Henry commentary. It's an oldie but goodie. They recently re-updated the language in it a couple of years ago, I think, and so that's now with up-to-date language. So it doesn't have any of the these, thous, and that we don't use today, but it's still the same messages, same everything. It's just they changed the wording of things to make it a bit more easier to understand. So that's really great. That's a really great sort of starting point for me as well.
Yeah, I always like you mentioned Chuck Misler. I mean, his commentaries are often on DVDs and so on, but you've got to slow him down because he speaks so fast sometimes.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, they're also available on his YouTube channel as well.
I got it through the Bible in 24 hours. That's a great Bible study series that helps tie in scriptures from Old Testament to New, and that's a pretty good study. And my dad always likes William Barclay. William Barclay is a very well known commentary writer.
Yeah. So yeah, they can be very, very useful.
I think Diane.
I like
the mute.
Oh, sorry. Wait, hang on.
There you go. Try again, Diane.
Yes, I remember William Barclay. He was very useful for giving historical background.
Yeah. And that can be really essential sometimes, is understanding the culture and the historical background as to what is going on in the text. I mean, you open up some of the things like, some of the kings, and you read through and go, well, that all sounds very, all the chronicles, it all sounds very exciting, but just actually getting that in the wider context of where have they come from, what is going on, where is their where is the journey, if you like, that the children of Israel are going through at this point, can be really, really helpful in actually working out what is the text here for, why is it trying to what is it actually trying to say. So
and just one other really quick thing as well. If you really do have a problem with commentaries and you understand, having man's interpretation of scripture, like I mentioned, really great resources to go for: Thompson Chain and the Westminster Reference Bible. Those are fantastic, really, really good. And there's no extra stuff in there. It's literally just the scripture interpreting scripture. And that's, if you want to go down that road, by all means, go right ahead. It's a great way to go. But if you want a little bit more clarity on something, or a little bit more deeper understanding on something, then lean into those study Bibles, lean into those commentaries to help you understand. And again, that's why I like to use Bible software and things like that, because it can help you reference all those things.